Okay, so as you know, we just finished our World War II unit. It was awesome. And now we're moving into the Cold War. So, to start off, I want you to list on a piece of paper the top 10 things that you know about the 50s and 60s. You're going to share with us one. Everyone's going to share one. So, you have to write something on your paper. It can be as complicated or as simple as you want. Here's some clues in case you're having a hard time. So, Bryn, would you like to share one with us?
Elvis Presley.
Thank you, dear. So, as we know, we know a little bit more about the Cold War than we thought we did. But a lot of the things that happened at that time were influenced by political strifes and things that were known as the Cold War. So, first off, for fun, we're going to look at some propaganda posters. So, Bryn, what are they trying to tell us in this poster?
That communism is an octopus and it's taking over the world.
Very good. So how is it like an octopus?
It has lots of arms.
And it's reaching into all these different countries. Very good job. What's this one trying to tell us?
It's telling somebody to be quiet. It looks like America is telling someone to be quiet.
Indeed. They got a lot of these propaganda posters and films and things like that during the Cold War, as they were advising people to be careful about telling country secrets, or else the communists would come in and take over. You had films like this, you had posters, they had commercials. I've seen one where there's a man who casually mentions that his brother works for the government, and there's a communist spy sitting next to him, and the entire country is taken over by communists because he didn't know to keep his mouth shut. In short, they were telling you to keep your mouth shut because you never know where the communists may be lurking. Alright, what about this one?
Saying that if communism comes to America, we're all gonna burn and the apocalypse is gonna start.
Yes, pretty much. So, judging from all of this, how big of a deal was communism in the United States?
Very, very big.
Very big. It was a very big, very real fear. How many of you have seen Red Dawn? Nobody?
No, I've seen it. I'm trying to remember the actors in it.
The new one, there's Chris Hemsworth.
There we go.
It has North Korea.
I've seen
The old
it.
one has Patrick Swayze in it. And in the old one, the communists come and they take over the United States, and a band of high schoolers have to take back the country. For them, that was a very real fear. If you watch the original one, that kind of gives you some background, and it's all based off of things that they felt could very likely happen in their lifetime. So yeah, communism was a very big threat at this time. Now we're going to look at some other things that were going on at this time period. We have civil rights demonstrations. We're going to go in a lot more into that next lecture, but these demonstrations were happening at this time period. We also have a lot of anti-war demonstrations. The United States at this time was in the Vietnam War and the Korean War. We had some incidences with Cuba that we'll talk about also not tomorrow, but the next day, when we talk about the Bay of Pigs, which was no bueno. So we have all these demonstrations of people saying that they're not going to war, that the war is not just, it's not our war, it's not our fight. And then we have other demonstrations with women wanting more rights. During this time period, it's very well known for for demonstrations and for riots. Now, judging from the information that we've been getting lately about World War II and things like that, why would you think that now, of all times, would people be demonstrating so much?
I have no idea.
There's an old movie called A Rebel Without a Cause. And it talks about this young man who wants a cause to fight for, like his dad had during World War II. And so he is angry, he's searching for something to fight for. So he gets involved in all of these different demonstrations, and he can't find one that he firmly believes in. So a lot of people think that all these demonstrations happen because people were looking for a cause to fight for that was just as important as what their parents fought for. Also, with the civil rights movement, we talked last week about how African Americans were being treated more equally in the war, how they were being treated more equally at home because they were needed in jobs. Same with women, they were getting more equality in jobs. And since these groups had started receiving more equality, they decided that they weren't going back, and they didn't want to go back to their old lives. They were staying with the new ones. And these demonstrations all started building on top of each other, and they started combining and thinking, well, if these groups are going to get rights, we want rights as well. So we also have Native American movements, as Native American tribes want more rights and more compensation for their lands and things like that. So, a lot of demonstrations at this time. We also have Nixon and Watergate, and a whole new relationship between the media, the people, and the government. So, with Nixon and Watergate, does anyone know about the Watergate scandal and how that happened?
They were recording conversations.
Yes, they were. Good job, friend. They were recording conversations for the opposing party to try to figure out how they could best beat them in the next election. Well, Bernstein and Woodward, awesome newspapermen that they were, discovered this and published it in the newspaper. And because of this article in the newspaper, Nixon was then taken and he was impeached. And then he later resigned from the presidency. Because remember, as we said, being impeached is not the same as being removed from office. So, this made the media have a new job in being the ones to keep the government in check. It's called almost the new check and balance. The media was the one to sit there and judge everything the government did and convey that to the people. But Watergate had a lot of impacts on the relations between the people and the government as well, because the government was all of a sudden seen as very corrupt, and the people no longer trusted the government as they once did. During war, people tend to trust their government more, as we talked about during World War II. But with the Nixon scandal, all of a sudden people started distrusting their government more and not seeing how this was supposed to help them, which also contributed to the demonstrations that we were talking about earlier. Also, there was a big race. So we have the space race and the first person on the moon. How many of you have seen October Sky?
No.
No? Okay. Well, that one, it talks about the space race as well. But pretty much what the thing was is that Russia and the United States were competing to be the first people to get to the moon. Because pretty much the Cold War was very much about how the country looked to the rest of the world. Because the United States thought that if they looked really cool and looked better than Russia, then all the countries would want to choose democracy. Whereas if all the countries looked at Russia and thought Russia looked cooler than the United States, everyone would go to communism. So, Russia was the first country to put a satellite out and to orbit the Earth, but we are the first people to set foot on the moon. So that is that. Also on the right we have the arms race, where in World War II nuclear bombs were atomic bombs. I think they're atomic bombs.
Atomic.
Thank you. Were first introduced into warfare, and after that, because Russia knew the United States had some, Russia built some, United States built bigger ones, and then Russia built bigger ones, and before we know it, they're building really big bombs. And they destroyed whole islands with these bombs. And never used them except in testing, but they wanted to be able to hold that threat over another country because it was that important to them. Okay. And so, because of these threats, they started having videos like this playing in their elementary schools.
Sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover. This is an official civil defense film produced in cooperation with the Federal Civil Defense Administration and in consultation with the Safety Commission of the National Education Association. Produced by Archer Productions, Incorporated. Hey, Bert, come on out and meet all these nice people, please. Oh, all right. We really can't blame you. You see, Bert is a very, very careful fellow. When there's danger, this is the way he keeps from being hurt. Sometimes it even saves his life. That's why these children are practicing to duck and cover just as you do in your school. We all know the atomic bomb is very dangerous. Since it may be used against us, we must get ready for it, just as we are ready for many other dangers that are around us all the time. Fire is a danger. It can burn whole buildings if someone is careless. But we are ready for fire. We have a fine fire department to put out the fire. And you have fire drills in your school so you know what to do. Automobiles can be dangerous too. They sometimes cause bad accidents, but we are ready. We have safety rules that car drivers and people who are walking must obey. Now, we must be ready for a new danger, the atomic bomb. First, you have to know what happens when an atomic bomb explodes. You will know when it comes. We hope it never comes, but we must get ready. It looks something like this. There is a bright flash, brighter than the sun, brighter than anything you've ever seen. If you are not ready, did not know what to do, it could hurt you in different ways. It could knock you down hard, or throw you against a tree or a wall. It is such a big explosion, it can smash in buildings and knock signboards over, and break windows all over town. But if you duck and cover, like Bert, you will be much safer. You know how bad sunburn can feel. The atomic bomb flash could burn you worse than a terrible sunburn, especially where you're not covered. Now, you and I don't have shells to crawl into like Bert the Turtle, so we had to cover up in our own way. First, you duck, then you cover. And very tightly, you cover the back of your neck, your face. Duck and cover underneath a table or desk or anything else close by. In Betty's school, they're talking about the atomic bomb too. Betty is asking the teacher, how can we tell when the atomic bomb may explode? And the teacher is explaining that there are two kinds of attack, with warning and without any warning. We think that most of the time we will be warned before the bomb explodes, so there will be time for us to get into our homes, schools, or some other safe place. civil defense workers